Welcome to Where Are They Now? We reach into the archives of Lenape, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Seneca High Schools and invite selected alumni to share memories and fill us in on their career paths after commencement. Since Lenape's first graduating class in 1961, Shawnee's in 1972, Cherokee's in 1978, and Seneca's in 2005, over 58,000 individuals have received diplomas from these four schools. Here now is your host, John Donaldson.
Welcome back to Where Are They Now? Our guest today is an alum from Shawnee High School's class of 1999, Phil Rynda. Phil is currently the creative director for the Cartoon Network series Shorts, and he currently resides in Los Angeles, California. Welcome to the program, Phil.
How's it going?
Great. We're thrilled to have you here. Went through your resume, and you're doing some outstanding work since graduating from Shawnee.
Thank you.
But before we get to that, why don't we go back a few years here, back to when you were in Shawnee, and why don't we talk about some of the things you were involved with, your activities. You had Executive Homeroom and National Honor Society. Why don't you talk about Executive Homeroom? Tell us about your experience with that back in those days.
It was super fun. I remember, I think I did it mostly my senior year. I feel like I was in the Executive Homeroom, and it felt really good to be just involved with the class and the senior class, helping set up kind of Spirit Week, and also, I don't remember what it was called, but the night after graduation, whatever that big party thing is, I can't remember what it was called.
Grad Bash?
Yeah, it was something like that. I forget what we called it back then. But yeah, it was really fun. It just felt nice to be involved with the class. It was really fun. I had a really good time.
And you obviously had good grades to be in the National Honor Society.
Yeah, I think I did okay. I probably should have been a better student, but yeah, I was in National Honor Society for a few years, and then Art Honor Society for most of my time at Shawnee. Admittedly, I was a little bit lazy, but I did okay. You all will be fine.
So some teachers had some major impacts on you. Let's talk about Mr. Jensen and the impact that he had on you while you were there.
Sure. Yeah, I guess Mr. Jensen was I think it was some sort of history class or social studies class my senior year. And something about Mr. Jensen, his teaching style, he kind of made us all really feel like adults. I never felt like Mr. Jensen was teaching us. I always felt like it was a conversation, which I really liked about that class. I loved going to that class. Loved the way Mr. Jensen dealt with everyone and respected us. And I really took that into my professional life and into now that I teach at college level. I try to teach the exact same way Mr. Jensen does, which is just have an open conversation and really get everyone engaged.
Probably the teacher that had the biggest impact on what you chose as a career, Mrs. Hudnut. Talk about her and the impact and how she got you involved in what you're doing today.
Yeah, Mrs. Hudnut, I guess, I had sort of, I had Mrs. Cannon for the first couple of years of art classes, and then Mrs. Hudnut was, I guess, my junior year when I was in Art Major 1. And I think Mrs. Hudnut was the first person to really help me realize how much fun it is to take art seriously and to really start thinking about art as more than just the fun 45-minute class, and something I was always I always loved doing, and she really helped me to focus on that and really turn it into something. So yeah, she was awesome. I love Mrs. Hudnut. She remains a good friend. We keep in touch for sure.
She's got to be very proud of you.
I think so. She feels like I get great emails from Mrs. Hudnut whenever she sees something on Facebook. She always writes me really excited. So it's pretty cool. It's nice. It's a nice relationship.
Was she involved in the Burlington County Arts Festival that you were involved with and going to at the time?
Yeah, all the art teachers at Shawnee, we would some of us would have a couple pieces and we'd submit and we would get in, and yeah, Mrs. B, Mrs. Hudnut, we would all, we would take a bus out for a day. It was like our away game as art students. It was that was the time that we got to go out and sort of represent Shawnee and be proud of what we do. And it was really great. It was an awesome day.
I like to always go and look at the yearbooks when we have a guest on, and I always find the quotes that they have in there interesting, and yours is very prophetic. Hopefully, you'll see my name at the end of one of those cartoon things. I also hope to become the shoe shiner at Little Mill. What would you have rather been doing today, shoe shiner or what you're doing now?
Oh man, well, the shoe shiner that I knew at Little Mill Country Club, he always seemed to be enjoying life. So I think I'd be happy doing either, but I'll take what I'm doing now for sure.
Maybe in retirement you can pick that one up.
Yeah, and if you're watching, Kieran, you're a good guy, and I hope you're doing well.
So you graduate Shawnee and you end up at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, and you earn a bachelor degree in fine arts. But while you're there, you actually land a job. Why don't you talk about the job that you were doing while you were at school?
Yeah, I got a call one day. One of my friends was a graphic design student, and he was sort of interviewing for a job at this web company called WDDG.com, which stands for World Domination Design Group. And he was interviewing for a job, and helped him kind of spruce up his portfolio. I got him in there, and then they were looking for someone to just do some illustrations. And he called me up, and I went in one day, and I kind of hit it off with these guys, and they would give me like a little like piecemeal work here and there. And then one day, the boss said, "We have this idea for a video game or a flash game for the web. Do you want to make it with us?" It was called Sadistic Boxing at the time. And I said, sure. I said, but can I bring in my friend Mike? He's really great. And they said, let's meet Mike. And we started working on this thing sort of intended for the internet. And right away, my boss was like, this is awesome. Let's try to make this for the Game Boy. So we produced it for the Game Boy Advance. We actually originally packaged it as Punch-Out. And we presented it to Nintendo of America. And they really liked it, but I guess Punch-Out is sort of a property of Nintendo Japan, and there was no way we were going to make it headway as like a small American publisher. So we made this game called Wade Hickston's Counterpunch. We changed it from Punch-Out. We changed the characters and stuff, and it got released on the Game Boy Advance. I don't remember when, but it wasn't a super huge success. But it's really beautiful. I think we really pushed the graphic capabilities of what the Game Boy could do. So I'm pretty proud of it.
So how do you, I mean, you're in high school, you're probably not working a lot with computers in the art department at the time, I would imagine, and you go to school and then all of a sudden you're creating a game for Nintendo. How does that transition work for students that may be at Shawnee right now thinking like, how do you go about that?
It's crazy. It's really, what I realized is that luckily at college, as a freshman, like I didn't know Photoshop, I didn't know any of this stuff. But I got to meet a couple older students who were really good at it. And this guy, Andy Gonsalves, who remains a close friend, and now he's working at Cartoon Network, we went to school together. He was a year older than me at SVA. And he was just really good. He made these films that were really polished and beautiful and colored and sound and all this stuff. And I just remember knocking on his dorm room without even knowing him and just saying, you got to teach me, show me what you're doing. You don't have to teach me everything, but just let me just watch you use it. And I kind of picked up a little bit from that. And then I honestly sat down, read a couple books on my own without even taking classes at SVA because they weren't even teaching it my freshman year. And I taught myself the stuff. So going into my second year, I knew more about the software than my actual animation teacher. So he would have me in my own class sort of teach the kids how to use After Effects and Premiere and do some compositing work with animation in my own class, which sort of was a bummer because I was teaching in my own class. But I just sat down and read the book, and I did it.
That's great. Things haven't changed that much, Phil. Even the students we have in school now, they're doing things that we don't even know how to do just because they sit down, learn it, and pick it up right away. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I really do think it's like riding a bike. You just kind of hop on, and you'll figure it out for sure.
So you also had done another spot. You worked for Altoids.com while you were there at that company. Did a spot for them?
Yeah, it was right before 9/11. We did a bunch of stuff for Cinnamon Altoids. I guess it was called TooHot.com, which was like an offshoot of Altoids. But unfortunately, 9/11 sort of squashed the campaign. But we did a lot of great work for them. And then I helped work on this game that's on Altoids.com. It's like an adventure game, sort of like a LucasArts games, which everyone in that class won't remember those games, Day of the Tentacle and all that kind of stuff. Sort of like what they're doing at Double Fine now with their adventure game. We made one of those for Altoids, and it was really fun, really good experience. And the Altoids people are really supportive of everything we did.
So you graduate in 2003, and you end up the character designer on Venture Brothers at Noodle Soup Productions, I guess the first year of Adult Swim?
It was the first season of the Venture Brothers. I think Adult Swim had been on air for a couple of years at
Okay.
that point, but it was the first season of the Venture Brothers, which was a dream. Um, to get jobs in animation, you actually take tests. So I submitted a portfolio. I had an interview. They thought my stuff was pretty good, and then they actually give you a drawing test, which I think the test for the Venture Brothers was like draw a ray gun, draw a sports car, draw a police officer, and then I had to draw Doc Venture, kind of like in a turnaround of Doc Venture. The producer called me and said, "We want to bring you on full time for Venture. We're going to be starting in a few weeks. And we want you to be one of the character designers on the first season." And I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. To have a job working on an Adult Swim show is awesome. And on top of that, I had seen the Venture Brothers pilot episode, and I thought it was awesome. So to be part of the first season really, really was special.
So you're still in New York at this time. You worked on another series that actually never made it to air and kind of prompted you leaving New York. Just talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, so after the Venture Brothers, I did a couple other little small things, and then an artist on the Venture Brothers who I became really close with got a job as art director on a new Disney TV show called Catbot, which was going to be produced in New York. I got hired. I think I was the third person hired on the production, third or fourth person. So they brought me over, and it was just the art director and myself. The director was in Los Angeles. He was moving out to New York to work on it. We were working on this show, and it was great. We got I think it was probably the best crew in New York at the time, probably one of the best crews in New York of all time working on this show. But at the end of the day, the show really wasn't that good. The scripts were not so good. The direction of the show overall, which was none of our fault, it was sort of a big Disney thing, just wasn't that good, and they weren't happy with it. So they laid us all off. So like on a Monday, they told us all, Wednesday's your last day. And that felt pretty awful. Like I had been working on it for I think 8 months at that point. And the New York animation industry it's bigger now than it was when I was there, but it's not that big. So about 60 of us all got laid off on that Wednesday, and we were all going to be fighting for the same, 20 jobs. And the director was from LA. We were close, and I just said, "Randy, can I come to LA with you? Are you going to go back this weekend?" It was Memorial Day weekend. And he said, "Sure, come back with me." And I was like, "I want to check it out. I think I'm ready to see if I can swing LA." So we went out. We got to LA. I landed a couple days after him. He picked me up from the airport, and it was Memorial Day, and he said, "We're going to go to a barbecue at a friend's house." And I said, "Okay." So we drove to Gendy Tartakovsky's house, who just directed Hotel Transylvania. He did Samurai Jack, Dexter's Labs, and Bionic Titan. Easily one of my heroes, one of my biggest heroes. We go to his house. It's his barbecue, and he's serving me hot dogs, at the grill. And I just was like in total shock and awe. And I just remember sitting in the corner. It was crazy. It was like, these guys who I kind of knew what they looked like, but I knew all their faces. Were all there at this party. Like everyone who worked on all those shows were there. And I talked to maybe 2 of them because I was absolutely terrified. But I was like, that didn't happen in New York, and that was awesome to be there. And I got really lucky to be at this particular party. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I get to work with my heroes if I'm out here. And I don't want to talk bad on people I worked in New York with. I worked with great people and people who are still my heroes there. But it was really nice to sort of get a taste of the other coast. So I went around to the studios with my portfolio that weekend, and I went to Cartoon Network, brought my portfolio, and Maxwell Adams of Billy and Mandy saw it, and I think I left the studio, and then that night he called and asked if I wanted to work on the show. So the timing was really good for me, but I definitely feel lucky. I think the stars aligned, and I couldn't be grateful enough for everyone who helped me get those stars in place.
So you end up at Cartoon Network and working on a series called The Adventures of Billy and Mandy, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Talk
Yep.
about what was that show about and what was your job on that show?
Sure. So I was the character designer on that show. Also, I think I came in on the fourth season and finished it out. We did a movie in there too. That was like a made-for-TV movie. So it was fourth or fifth season that I started on. So sort of I kind of worked on the last third of that show, and I was a character designer on that. But what was really nice about that show was it's not scripted. So the storyboard artists actually write the show. So the animators, the cartoonists, we write the show. So it was really like an exciting thing where like I never really knew what was going to be on my workload for the week until I saw the storyboard artists storyboard, and like everyone got to kind of see the birth of these really funny cartoons happen. And it was also a situation that because of that, animation is sort of an assembly line. So when it got to my point after storyboard, it comes to me, and then it's not just about executing what is in the script that I need to draw. It's about taking that storyboard and making it even funnier, making it even better. So this was new for me. We didn't really do it that way on the shows I worked on in New York. So that was awesome, and it was a great learning experience. It was really freeing. And I think I have a good quick story. Like the first day of work, I went into Maxwell's office and said, like, all right, I'm here. Like, I want to sit down with you. I want you to teach me how to draw like you. I want you to show me exactly how you want me to work, what you want my work to look like. And that's what I want to do the best job I can for you. So show me how to do that. And he just looked at me and said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, don't you want me to draw the way you draw? And he said, no, I hired you because I want you to draw the way you draw. And I want you to draw what you want to draw and how you want to draw it. And if one week you want to, push it this way, and another week you want to push it a little bit more this way, I'm going to let you do that. And that was crazy because he just sort of he gave me all this responsibility. And it was fantastic. It was such a good learning experience. Adam, or Maxwell Adams, it was awesome. He really trusted his crew, and I feel really lucky to have been part of that.
Is that type of freedom rare in your industry, to have the ability to do like what you were doing?
I don't know if it's rare. Actually, I would say it's not rare. I think that a lot of productions run that way. But for me, it was very. A lot of the studios here, they'll call a show creator driven. So a show like Billy and Mandy was creator driven. A show like Adventure Time, regular show, Gravity Falls, these are creator driven shows. So that's where the person who's the creator of the show really gets to push what it is that you're making. And I think also to the degree where every person who is creating something for the show, they really get to drive it. And then in New York, I was working on script-driven shows. The Venture Brothers is a creator-driven show. Jackson Public is hilarious and great, but he's such a strong writer that if it's in the script, that's what he wants. And he lets us push it a little bit, but not too much. Catbot was totally a script-driven show, so the script was it. We didn't really get to plus it. We couldn't really change it at all. So not that it's a rare thing to have that kind of freedom, but it was a first for me. It was the first time where I really felt like I wasn't trying to fill someone else's shoes necessarily. He wanted me to grow in my own skin and do the best me I could be. So that was awesome.
So while you're working on the show, you earn a really special award. In 2007, you get a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation Character Design for your work on Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
I did. I have it. I have it right here.
That's awesome.
It's pretty big. It's heavy. It's pretty. The coolest thing I think was we got to go to the Emmys, and I brought my grandma. My whole family flew out from New Jersey, and my grandma came. And we were at the ceremony, and my grandma saw Spike Lee, and my grandmother's from Newark, and I guess Spike Lee spoke in Newark at some point. And my grandmother saw Spike Lee and pointed at him and just went, "I know that guy. I got to go talk to him." And I was like, she just sort of beelined for Spike Lee. And I was just like, and he had an entourage of these big dudes. And there was no way she was going to get to him. And I remember stopping her and being like, "Grandma, that's Spike Lee. He's a big director. You can't go talk to him. You're not going to get through." And I feel bad. I kind of wish I had seeing if she could have gotten a few minutes with Spike Lee. But it was really funny to see her do that and get excited about seeing Spike Lee. And she doesn't even know who he is as a filmmaker. She knows him as a guy who spoke in Newark at some point when she was living there.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty crazy.
Pretty cool to get to do that for your grandma.
It was awesome. It was really fun.
Do you remember what you were up against when you were nominated for that award? Like, who did you beat out? Do you recall?
You know, what's interesting about that category is that the studio sort of nominates you, and then you're judged by a panel of judges. So I don't actually know who I was up against, but I do know other people who won that year. Like, I know Sue Montt was the art director on Camp Laszlo. She also won an Individual Achievement Award that year. Who else won that year? There was a few of us. So it's not really a competitive category. So that was actually also really cool. Is my category, not that it's not competitive. It's not. It's a juried category versus a judged category. So instead of it being like the three nominees are, this person, this, and this, and the winner is, my category is cool because if you win, they call you before you go, and they're like, "Hey, you won." So you're going to go and you're going to get your award.
So
you
knew going you were going to win. You weren't worried about like, oh gosh, am I going to look like one of those faces that just lost?
Exactly, and that's why it was awesome. Was because I knew I won. So my family was like, oh, they're like, we're coming out for that. So my whole family came, and my little sister came, and my girlfriend at the time came. So yeah, it was. She's now my wife. But yeah, she was there with me. So yeah, it was awesome. We had a nice little crew.
So the next project you worked on was a favorite in my family for my kids, and they were sorry to see it go off the air, was Chowder. Talk about your experience and what you did for that series.
So Chowder, on the first season, I was a character designer on that. And it was a board-driven show or a creator-driven show, like I was saying. So Carl Greenblatt, or C.H. Greenblatt, as I think he is known on the screen, he worked with me on Billy and Mandy. Most of the people on Billy and Mandy moved on to work on Chowder. And he brought me on and he helped me kind of figure out the main characters. I worked a lot on Gazpacho. I remember doing a lot of time on him. I remember working on Panini. I worked a little bit on Chowder. I worked a little bit on Schnitzel, a little bit on Mung. Carl had pretty much nailed those guys down. But yeah, it was great working with him. So I did a season of character design. And then I sort of wanted to kind of move into story. So I took a job in the story department as a storyboard revisionist, which is sort of like an entry-level story job, which the studio didn't want me to do because in a way it was sort of a step down on the ladder because I was character designer, which isn't typically an entry-level job. And I wanted to move to an entry-level job, and they were a little bit grumpy about that. But I eventually convinced them, and they let me do it. And I was able to do that for I think it was another season and a half or so. But I got to write a couple episodes. So I wrote an episode what was that one? Where there's like a bully in town. She's like a big chicken. She bullies Gazpacho. I wrote that one, and then I wrote another one that was about a giant, and Chowder has to deliver a 1,000-pound cake to this man who lives on the top of a giant. So he has to climb up the side of this giant to deliver the cake, and that one was a great one to work on.
You recall that one very well.
Yeah, it was a good one. So it was an awesome show, and we had an awesome crew. I'm going to keep saying that because I feel really fortunate, and I won't talk about the awful crews I worked with. But
sure, we'll stay away from them.
Yeah, we won't talk about.
Did you do a lot of writing before Chowder, or was that your first real endeavor there?
Yeah, that was my first time writing, and again, it's not because the board artists do the writing. For the giant episode, I didn't write a script. What I did was they call it an outline. So it was only like 2 or 3 pages where I just kind of went over the major plot points. Why Chowder's doing what he's doing. How does he feel doing that? Some broad stroke ideas of the big picture stuff, and then the storyboard artist writes the dialogue and kind of finishes it off. And the bullying episode, which I can't remember what it was called. Oh, Gazpacho Fights Back. That's what that one was called. That one I was the storyboard artist on, so someone else gave me their outline, which again was a couple of pages long, and then I took that and I fleshed that out into a full episode. Because it's a 2-page outline. Those cartoons are, quarter hours, so they're typically 11 to 13 page scripts if they were scripted. But instead of a script, we have a storyboard, and that's about if there's 2 board drawings a page, they're about 250 pages. So it's about 500 storyboard drawings for 1/4 hour. So I did those for that Gazpacho Fights Back episode.
Okay, so after Chowder, you move on to become the lead designer for Adventure Time for the first 2.5 seasons of that show, and that's something you're most proud of to do this time in your career, I believe?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more proud of that show. I really feel like it sort of opened the floodgates for a whole new type of cartoon or I shouldn't say whole new type of cartoon. It's like a classic cartoon that people had kind of stopped making for a long time, where it's really fun and exciting, and it really celebrates creativity and youthfulness and movement. Animation's about movement, and I think Adventure Time really, really celebrates that, and it's just really, really, it's like a blank canvas that Penn Ward, the creator, just sort of allows himself and his crew to just sort of go berserk and do not whatever they want, but sort of really have fun and really play. And Finn and Jake are such strong characters that I always say, if you could take 2 characters and put them in an elevator and make something funny out of just that situation, then you got pretty good characters. And like Finn and Jake are perfect for that. So yeah, it was an awesome experience.
So you have your own little Alfred Hitchcock spin on this, where you like to show up in some of the episodes. Talk about that, how that happens.
Yeah, I know, right? So it was like a joke. I didn't put myself in, but there's the episode, I guess the first time I show up, I show up a couple different ways on the show. In one of the first season episodes called City of Thieves, there's a ninja, and that's me. That's actually a character named Phil. They also did this thing where there's this sort of weird face that shows up all the time on the show, and it's the Phil face. It's supposed to be my face. It was sort of Penn and Natasha, who was one of the character designers of mine on my team first season. They started doing this really funny caricature of me, and then Finn uses my face to enter the nightosphere. So he draws my face on the wall, and then spills bug milk on it, and then the wall parts open.
Does Phil's face ever speak, and is it your voice?
No, the only time my character has ever spoken, actually one of the other artists did the voice of me, this guy Ghost Shrimp, he was the background designer for the first few seasons. He did my voice in that City of Thieves episode. I think they made me sound really wussy, so it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny to have Ghost Shrimp do it.
So you leave Cartoon Network for a year and end up at Disney. What do you end up doing at Disney while you're there?
So I ended up getting a call from Alex Hirsch, the creator of Gravity Falls, who I had helped with on the pilot a little bit, and they wanted to know. They sort of didn't think I would be interested in leaving Adventure Time because I was so close to it. But I had worked on Adventure Time for 2 seasons, and Alex was starting Gravity Falls, and I really liked the idea of the type of show he was going to try to make. And he called me over, and I started as production designer on that show. So my job was mainly with the characters of the show, but I was sort of the most experienced television designer on the project early on. So they brought me on to sort of help kind of get everything going and just sort of mentor some of the younger guys who make that show. Ian Worrell, who's the art director, is incredibly talented, but it was his first job as working on a television show, and to start as an art director is totally crazy. So I sort of came in to support him and make sure that his job was as easy as possible. And Gravity Falls is a great show, and I feel really proud of it. It was really hard to make, but it's really amazing on the screen, so I'm definitely proud of it.
So Cartoon Network steals you back after a year there. How did they manage that?
When I left Cartoon Network, I think I shocked a few people because I'd been there for 6 years and I was sort of this fixture there, which I think was part of the reasons why I left, because I got really comfortable and I was like, I need to go try something else out. So Curtis Leelash, who is he's like the president or the vice president of kind of content on the network right now. I'm actually screwing up his title. I don't even remember what it is. But I got to know him when I was working there, and he called me up and said, "Why'd you leave? We want you back. What can we do?" And I said, I really would I'd love to come back. I love Cartoon Network, but I don't want to work on a TV show. I don't want to work on a series. I want to help develop series. So I want to work on when ideas come through the door and you guys like them and you start to flesh them out to see if they're good potential series candidates. I want to work on those projects. And he said, okay, well, we don't really have that job yet, but maybe we can figure something out for you. So a few more months went by, and they basically created my position for me, and they hired me to do basically exactly what I wanted to do, which is so cool. So right now, last year I worked on eight different cartoons. So 8 different shows. We made pilots for all of them. And then this year I've got 2 going right now, and we'll probably do another 6 of them this year. And it's great. So it's like every week is a totally different challenge. Every hour is a totally different challenge. It's really, really fun.
That's got to be so exciting. You just kind of create your own job and say, here, this is the job I want to do, and they created it for you.
Yeah, I mean, I got really lucky because...
Keep saying that, Phil. I think it has something to do a little bit more than luck.
I think I'm a nice guy, and I think I work hard, and I'm gonna toss it back to Mr. Jensen. I think that when I work for people, I try to really work with them, and I don't go in with an ego. And if you want me to draw bad, I'll draw bad. I want you to be happy. So I go in with that idea, and I work with people, and I like everything. I love using the word conversation. I just like making work a conversation. So I think that's part of the reason why I have a good reputation in the animation industry, and that's really helped me is to be a really open-minded person, and I don't I get grumpy, and I've had to do things that I'm not proud of, or or work that I don't really think is what it should be. But a lot of the time, it's not my call, and I'll voice my opinion, but I do it in a way that makes people want to keep working with me. And obviously, when I left Cartoon Network, it wasn't even like when I left. When I remember telling Penn I was leaving, he said, "You got to do your thing, Phil." He's like, I would never want to. You're on your own path. You have to walk your path, and I really like that he said that to me. And I think it's really, it was really telling of me as an artist to get a call from an executive to say, why did you leave? Because I my work and my personality went beyond what I was doing on the productions. It was more about me as a creative person at the studio and for the network. So it was really nice to get that call back and to be able to go back to Cartoon Network and sort of reinvent myself there.
Well, you certainly are easy to get along with. I mean, I have to tell our viewing audience that I messed up and put you on the calendar on the wrong date, and you were very flexible and still made it work for us today. So I can see, how you are easy to get along with and make people happy. So I appreciate you doing that for us today, Phil.
No problem.
So why you're, the last 3 years you're also teaching at the California Institute of Arts. What are you teaching there, and how's that going for you?
It's good. I teach character design. I think the best thing about that is I actually applied to CalArts. That was my first choice college, and I didn't get in out of high school. And then I did, I think, 2 years at SVA, and I tried to get in again, and I still didn't get in. And I was pretty upset. I was really broken. I was really broken up about it, and in hindsight, I realized my mistake was that I really edited the work I submitted. Instead of showing everything I loved doing, I sent them what I thought they wanted to see, and I was wrong. So they had a job opening come up. My wife went to school there, so she sort of made an informal introduction with the head of the animation department. I went in and met him, and I just was myself, and they hired me to teach character design, which I love that was the school that really broke my heart and didn't let me, pay to be there, and now they pay me to be there. So it's pretty cool. I get the last laugh,
You draw back on Mrs. Hudnut at all when you're teaching any of her techniques?
Yeah, I think so. What's funny is I keep mentioning Mr. Jensen with that conversation, but Mrs. Hudnut was absolutely the same way. It was always, with her and with art major in her class and in Mrs. B's class, what I really liked about it was they taught to us as individuals as opposed to here's material, the class has to absorb it. So when we were working on our art pieces, they would talk to you one-on-one and work with you and try to get you to improve where you need to improve, or they would get you thinking a slightly different way, which is exactly what I do in my class. I try to teach to the individual student versus to the class, which is awesome.
So that kind of brings us up to date on your professional career. Outside of that, you have some other interests. You've been to Seoul, Korea.
Yeah.
I believe, was that through work?
Yeah, Disney sent me the animation for most of the cartoons on television gets produced in Korea. So while working on Gravity Falls, Disney sent myself and the art director Ian to go to the studios that were producing the animation and sort of draw with their directors and their artists and kind of get them up to speed with what we wanted. It was amazing. It was a great trip.
You also visit Hawaii quite often. Why do you visit Hawaii so much?
Because it's awesome. My wife is from Hopewell, and her family used to go to Hawaii all the time when she was a kid. So when I started dating her, she always would talk about Hawaii. So I said, well, we have to take a trip to Hawaii. So on our first trip to Hawaii, we went and we got engaged on that trip. So, not only was it an amazing vacation, but it was the place where my wife and I got engaged, and luckily living in Los Angeles, flying to Hawaii is actually not that far. It's only like a 5.5 hour, 6 hour flight, so it's not too crazy. So we would try to go every year for her birthday. We went like 3 years in a row, but we haven't been in a while because she was pregnant for the last year, and we just had our baby twin boys.
How's that going? How's that turned your world upside down?
It's totally insane. I think it's constantly turning upside down. They're awesome and they're adorable, and they're so much fun. I can't wait to kind of see what this adventure is. So yeah, it's cool.
So Phil, we're pretty much at the end here. I have one more question for you. Could
Sure.
you give some words of advice to students that are in high school now on what they could do in high school while they're still here, and even when they get out, to make it in the world today?
Yeah. What would I say? I guess I would say, and this, you'll hear this a lot, but it really is true, is really figure out what you love doing. And think about it in a broad way. Like if you really love music, listening to music, maybe music production or something like that, or working for a radio station, or getting a job at Pandora. I think actually one of my classmates is now working at Pandora from Shawnee. So figure out what you love to do and you would do for free, and then figure out if there's a way for you to get paid for it, because then the rest of your life will be much happier. And don't get too stressed out too much when things don't work out, and when you get laid off from a job or whatever, everything will be okay. You just gotta kind of keep your spirits up and be prepared to do a little bit of moving and shaking if you have to. But that's what I would say, I guess. I hope that's encouraging.
Yeah, sounds great, Phil. I can't tell you how much I've appreciated you coming on the show today and giving us time and speaking with us today about everything you've been up to.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with Phil Rynda, the creative director for the Cartoon Network Shorts Department, and currently resides in Los Angeles, California. Please join us next time for more alumni interviews on Where Are They Now?